The morning sun filtered through the half-closed blinds of Dr. Alicia Morgan's small but spotless apartment. She stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her blazer, preparing for another day at St. Clair Medical Center, where she worked tirelessly as an emergency physician. She was known for her calm under pressure, her compassion, and her brilliance. But lately, her patience was being tested, not by her patients, but by the health insurance company that had refused to cover her mother's critical surgery. Her mother, Evelyn Morgan, had been diagnosed with a rare heart condition that required immediate surgery. The procedure cost nearly $120,000, but despite decades of paying premiums, their insurance company, Golden Care Health, had denied the claim, labeling it as non-essential. Alicia had spent weeks calling, emailing, and pleading with the insurance representatives, only to be met with cold indifference. But what broke her was a call that morning. The representative, Mark Hensley, spoke with a clipped tone and no emotion. "Dr. Morgan, as I mentioned before, this procedure doesn't meet the criteria for coverage. Your mother's condition doesn't qualify as life-threatening." Alicia's voice trembled. She could die without this surgery. What part of that isn't life-threatening? Mark sighed dramatically. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but our policy is clear. Maybe next time, choose a better plan, if you can afford one." The venom in his tone hit her like a slap. It wasn't just about money. It was about who she was. His tone, the condescension, it carried that unmistakable edge of racism she'd encountered her whole life. Alicia hung up the call, her hand trembling. She stared at the phone, her reflection in the screen showing both fury and heartbreak. For a moment, she felt helpless. But then something inside her shifted, a spark of resolve. She was done begging. As a doctor, she knew something Mark didn't. Golden Care Health had been under investigation for years for fraudulent claim denials and racial discrimination patterns in approvals. But she also knew those investigations moved slowly, buried in bureaucracy, unless someone gave them a push. She spent the next 5 minutes in silence, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She pulled up internal records, data that wasn't illegal for her to access, but data that most people didn't know how to find. Through her hospital's shared network, she found Golden Care's medical rejection patterns, their approval rates by demographic, and a shocking pattern: Black patients' claims were denied 3 times more often than white patients with identical diagnoses. She packaged the data, attached the recordings of her calls with Mark, and added one more thing: her credentials as a respected doctor and researcher. Then she composed an email. To every major news outlet, investigative journalist, and the Department of Health and Human Services. Subject: systemic racial discrimination and fraudulent denials by Golden Care Health Insurance. She hit send. Within 5 minutes, her phone started buzzing non-stop. Reporters were calling. News outlets wanted interviews. The story exploded across social media under the hashtag Golden Care Scandal. By evening, Golden Care Health stock had plunged. Their CEO was forced to release a statement, promising an internal review. But it was too late. The story had gone viral. People across the country were sharing their experiences, exposing years of injustice hidden beneath paperwork and legal jargon. The next morning, Alicia walked into her hospital as usual. Colleagues greeted her with quiet nods of respect. They knew. Word had spread. The once invincible corporation was crumbling under public outrage and federal scrutiny. 2 days later, she received a call. It was not from Mark Hensley. It was from the Golden Care CEO himself. "Dr. Morgan, we sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding. Your mother's surgery has been fully approved. All costs will be covered, and we would like to offer an additional grant for medical research." Alicia cut him off. "No thank you. The surgery will go forward. But your apology means nothing until every family you denied gets justice." She ended the call. That afternoon, her mother went into surgery, with the best cardiac surgeon in the state, paid in full. As she sat by her mother's bedside afterward, Alicia smiled for the first time in weeks. Evelyn squeezed her hand weakly, whispering, "You fought for me." Alicia leaned closer. "I fought for everyone they've ever done this to." News channels later reported that Golden Care Health faced federal penalties, lawsuits, and a massive class action suit from thousands of affected families. Mark Hensley was fired after his recorded conversation went public, and his smug voice became the symbol of corporate racism. And as the world watched the scandal unfold, Dr. Alicia Morgan returned quietly to her work, saving lives, one patient at a time. But the world would remember the woman who, in just 5 minutes, brought a giant to its knees, because her revenge wasn't about anger. It was about justice. 2 months had passed since the Golden Care Health scandal erupted across the nation. The name Dr. Alicia Morgan had become synonymous with courage and justice. Every news outlet wanted an interview. Social media called her the woman who fought the system and won. But Alicia wasn't interested in fame. Her only concern was her mother, Evelyn, who was now recovering well after her surgery. The media storm was beginning to calm down, Or so Alicia thought. Then one night, as she sat in her office finishing her patient reports, her phone buzzed. The message came from an unknown number. "You think you've won, Dr. Morgan? You've made powerful enemies. Stay silent if you know what's good for you." Her heart skipped a beat. She stared at the message, her fingers frozen above the screen. The sender had used a burner number, no name, no trace. For a moment, fear crept in. But Alicia was not the kind of woman who bowed to threats. She had faced death in the ER, racism in the boardroom, and injustice in the system. This was just another battle. She took a deep breath and typed a single reply. Then they picked the wrong woman to threaten. The next morning, she was summoned to the hospital administrator's office. Sitting there was Richard Hale, a senior official from Golden Care Health. His sharp suit and fake smile couldn't hide his discomfort. "Dr. Morgan," he began smoothly, "first, let me say that Golden Care deeply regrets what happened. But your actions, leaking confidential data, were technically a violation of policy. We're here to discuss possible consequences." Alicia leaned back, her eyes steady. "You mean the data proving your company discriminated against thousands of black patients? The data that the Department of Justice is already investigating?" Hale's smile faded. "You're playing with fire, doctor. These cases can get complicated. Not as complicated as explaining to the federal court why you denied life-saving care based on race," she shot back. He hesitated, then slid a folder across the table. "We're prepared to make this right for you. A private settlement. $500,000. You resign quietly, no further press involvement." Alicia looked at the folder but didn't open it. Instead, she stood up, her expression calm. "I didn't do this for money, Mr. Hale. I did it so people like you can't keep playing God with people's lives." She turned and walked out, leaving him sitting in stunned silence. That evening, Alicia visited her mother at home. Evelyn was sitting by the window, reading, her strength returning day by day, still causing earthquakes. She teased gently. Alicia smiled. Maybe just aftershocks. But inside, she was uneasy. The threat message hadn't left her mind. And now, after her meeting with Hale, she knew Golden Care wasn't done. That night, she received a call from Agent Luis Navarro, a federal investigator from the Department of Health and Human Services. "Dr. Morgan, we've been monitoring Golden Care's activities closely since your report. Something's happening. We intercepted an internal memo. They're planning to destroy key evidence from their servers in the next 48 hours. Alicia's pulse quickened. "You can stop them, right?" "We can, but we need proof that they're doing it intentionally. You're one of the few people with access to their network through the hospital's insurance integration system." He hesitated. "Can we count on your help?" There was a long silence. Alicia knew the risk. If she got caught accessing their system again, she could lose her medical license. But she also knew what would happen if she didn't act. The truth would disappear. She finally said, "Send me the details. I'll do what needs to be done." That night, while the city slept, Alicia sat at her computer. Her hands trembled slightly as she navigated through encrypted servers, tracing the data flow between Golden Care's headquarters and the hospital network. Her training as a doctor had made her methodical and calm under pressure, skills that served her well now. After hours of work, she found it, a hidden directory labeled Archive Restricted. Inside were thousands of patient claim records, proof of racial bias and fraudulent denials. She began transferring the files to a secure drive. Then, her screen flickered. "Access denied. Unauthorized download detected." Her heart raced. Someone on the other end had noticed. The cursor on her screen began to move by itself. Someone was remotely controlling it. "Damn," she whispered. She yanked the flash drive out just as the system locked her out completely. Moments later, her office lights flickered. Someone was cutting the power. She grabbed her coat, slipped the drive into her pocket, and ran for the stairs. The moment she reached the parking lot, a black SUV pulled up near the entrance. Two men in suits stepped out, scanning the area. Alicia ducked behind a car, her breath shallow. Her mind raced, not out of panic, but focus. She waited until they turned away, then sprinted toward the street, disappearing into the crowd. By morning, Alicia was in a safe house arranged by Agent Navarro. She handed him the flash drive. "This is everything," she said, exhausted. "Proof of systemic fraud, cover-ups, racial targeting, all of it." Navarro nodded. "You did the right thing, doctor. This will end them for good." A few days later, the FBI raided Golden Care's headquarters. News channels lit up again. The company's executives were arrested for obstruction, fraud, and data tampering. Richard Hale was among them. When Alicia saw the news, she sat quietly, a mix of relief and disbelief washing over her. Her mother came to sit beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "They tried to silence you," Evelyn whispered. "But the truth always speaks louder." Alicia smiled faintly. "Maybe now, the system will start listening." Outside, the morning sun rose once more, bright and clean, like a promise of justice fulfilled, because this time, Alicia's revenge wasn't just a strike, it was a revolution. The world was watching. 2 months after the dramatic FBI raid on Golden Care Health, the case had exploded into one of the biggest corporate scandals in American history. The media called it the healthcare reckoning. Dozens of Golden Care executives were arrested, and millions of leaked documents showed a horrifying truth, that the company had been secretly operating a VIP priority algorithm, a system that ranked patients based on income, zip code, and race. At the center of it all stood Dr. Alicia Morgan, the woman whose courage had started the fire. The federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. buzzed with tension as cameras flashed outside. Reporters shouted questions as Alicia stepped out of a black SUV, wearing a simple gray suit and a calm, determined expression. Her mother, Evelyn, now fully recovered, watched from home on the TV, tears in her eyes. Inside the courtroom, the air was heavy. On one side sat the Golden Care legal team, a wall of suits, stone-faced and silent. On the other, Alicia sat beside Agent Luis Navarro, who had been assigned to her protection since the night she escaped the hospital. The prosecutor stood. "We call Dr. Alicia Morgan to the stand." She rose, straightened her shoulders, and walked with quiet confidence. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. When she took her seat, the judge nodded. "You may begin." The prosecutor asked the first question. "Dr. Morgan, could you explain to the court how you discovered evidence of Golden Care's discriminatory practices?" Alicia took a slow breath. "It started with a denial. My mother's life-saving surgery was labeled as non-essential. I thought it was a mistake, until I realized this wasn't the first time they'd done it. I found hundreds of identical denials, all affecting patients of color. That's when I knew it was deliberate." She turned her gaze toward the defense table. "I wasn't just fighting for my mother. I was fighting for everyone they silenced." The prosecutor nodded and continued. "Dr. Morgan, could you explain what the VIP priority algorithm is?" Alicia clicked a remote. A massive screen behind her lit up, displaying files she had recovered from Golden Care's secret servers. It was an AI system used internally to prioritize patient claims. But in reality, it was a tool to filter who was profitable and who wasn't. Wealthy, white patients were labeled Tier 1, automatic approval. Middle-class patients of color were Tier 3. And those in poorer, predominantly black neighborhoods? Tier 5, automatic denial. A stunned silence filled the courtroom. Reporters' fingers flew across keyboards. Even the judge's face hardened. The prosecutor asked quietly, "And how long has this been in place?" Alicia's voice was steady. "Over 7 years." When it was the defense attorney's turn, he tried to corner her. "Dr. Morgan," he said, feigning politeness, "you violated several data protection laws. You hacked into a private network. Isn't that correct?" She didn't flinch. "I accessed data my hospital had lawful integration rights to. And what I found saved lives. Sometimes the law protects the wrong people, until someone exposes the truth." A quiet murmur rippled through the courtroom. Even the jury members exchanged glances. The defense attorney scowled. "So you see yourself as some kind of hero?" Alicia's eyes were cold but calm. "No. I see myself as someone who refused to stay silent." By the end of her testimony, the courtroom was silent. The prosecutor thanked her and said, "No further questions, Your Honor." When Alicia stepped down, Agent Navarro gave her a subtle nod, a quiet acknowledgement that she had just changed history. Outside the courthouse, the media swarmed her once again. Cameras flashed, microphones reached out, and questions flew. "How does it feel to bring down a billion-dollar company? What message do you have for other insurance victims?" Alicia paused on the courthouse steps, looking out over the crowd. "I didn't bring anyone down," she said softly. "The truth did. And the truth doesn't need permission to speak." The crowd erupted in applause. On a quiet afternoon, Alicia stood outside the hospital where she still worked. The air felt lighter, freer. A group of young interns walked past, whispering excitedly. One of them stopped, smiling shyly. "Dr. Morgan, you're the reason I decided to become a doctor," she said. "You showed me that medicine isn't just about healing the body, it's about fighting for what's right." Alicia smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Then promise me something," she said gently. "Never let fear make you small." As the sun set over the city, Alicia looked toward the horizon. She didn't seek revenge anymore. She didn't need it, because now, every patient who got the care they deserved, every life saved because the system had changed, that was her victory, and deep down, she knew this wasn't just her story. It was the story of every person who had ever been told they weren't worth saving, and finally proved the world wrong. 6 months had passed since the historic court ruling. Dr. Alicia Morgan's name had become a symbol of integrity across the nation. The Morgan Healthcare Fairness Act was now law, forcing insurance companies to disclose their approval algorithms to public oversight. The world had changed, at least, that's what people believed, but Alicia knew better. Corruption didn't vanish overnight. It simply hid, waiting for the right moment to return. One crisp morning, Alicia sat on the balcony of her mother's home, sipping tea as sunlight touched the garden. Evelyn, now healthier than ever, smiled softly. "You finally look peaceful," she said. Alicia laughed lightly. "For once, I feel like I can breathe again." Her peace didn't last long. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. "We'd like to meet. We believe your vision can change healthcare forever. Nova Life Systems." Alicia frowned. She'd heard of Nova Life, a brand new health tech corporation claiming to build the most transparent and fair insurance system ever created. They were backed by billionaires, praised by the media, and rumored to be hiring the best minds in medicine. The message continued, "We want you to lead our medical ethics and AI transparency division. Name your price." Her instinct told her to ignore it. But something about the message intrigued her. Maybe, just maybe, this was the chance to make lasting change from within. After a few days of consideration, she agreed to a meeting. The Nova Life headquarters in New York City was a glass fortress, sleek, towering, and filled with cutting-edge tech. Alicia was greeted by Ethan Vale, the company's charismatic CEO, a man in his early 40s with sharp eyes and a voice that could sell anything. "Dr. Morgan," he said warmly, shaking her hand. "You've done the impossible. You took on a corporate giant and won. We don't want to repeat Golden Care's sins. We want to build something better, with your help." Alicia studied him carefully. "And what exactly do you need me to do?" Ethan smiled. "We're launching an AI-driven global insurance platform. No race, no wealth bias. Just data and ethics. You'd be the face of it." He slid a digital contract across the table. The salary figure was astronomical. The influence, unprecedented. But something about his words made her uneasy. "If you're truly transparent," she said slowly, "I'd like full access to your algorithmic systems before I decide." Ethan hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Of course. You'll get everything you need." That night, in her hotel suite, Alicia accessed the files Nova Life provided. At first glance, everything looked perfect: clean code, transparent criteria, fair distribution models, but as she dug deeper into the encrypted back-end, something familiar caught her eye. Hidden beneath layers of code was a subroutine labeled Legacy Prioritization Protocol. Her pulse quickened. She recognized the architecture. It was almost identical to Golden Care's old VIP priority algorithm. The only difference was the branding and slightly disguised metrics. Her stomach dropped. Nova Life wasn't trying to reform healthcare. They were rebranding corruption, and this time, they were smarter. The algorithm didn't sort patients by race or income directly. Instead, it used predictive risk markers, a system of coded variables that still resulted in the same discriminatory outcomes, but under the guise of data optimization. It was Golden Care all over again, just dressed in shiny new ethics. The next morning, Alicia confronted Ethan Vale in his office. "I looked at your system," she said quietly. "You're running a modified version of Golden Care's discrimination algorithm." Ethan's charming smile didn't falter. "Modified, yes. But not illegal. We call it risk stratification. The system rewards healthy, profitable clients. That's business, doctor. You of all people should understand sustainability." Alicia's jaw tightened. "You're using the same excuses Golden Care used to deny people their right to live." Ethan leaned back in his chair, his tone darkening. "And you're standing in the way of progress. Again." There it was, the mask slipping. He stood, walking around the desk. "Don't make the same mistake twice, Dr. Morgan. Join us. Shape the system from within. Or stand against us and watch it consume everything you've built." Alicia stared at him for a long moment, then turned to leave. "You can't threaten someone who's already lost everything once. I know what it costs to fight men like you." That night, she met with Agent Luis Navarro again. When she showed him the evidence, he sighed heavily. Nova Life's backed by international investors. Taking them down won't be easy. They've got lawyers, governments, and lobbyists in their pocket. Alicia nodded. "Then we'll expose them the same way we exposed Golden Care, through truth." She began collecting proof, recording board meetings, tracking code changes, and interviewing whistleblowers. Within weeks, she had everything: emails, data trails, secret investor memos, and when she was ready, she released it all to the public. The fallout was nuclear. #NovaLifeExposed trended worldwide. Investors pulled out, governments froze contracts, and journalists uncovered links between Nova Life and former Golden Care executives. Ethan Vale tried to run a damage control campaign, but the evidence was undeniable. He was forced to resign, and Nova Life's operations were suspended pending a federal investigation. Once again, The system had tried to rise, and once again, Dr. Alicia Morgan had burned it down. Weeks later, Alicia stood at a medical ethics conference, addressing a packed hall of students, doctors, and activists. Technology can save lives, she said, her voice steady. But when greed writes the code, people die quietly. We cannot let algorithms replace empathy. The crowd erupted in applause. As she stepped off the stage, Evelyn met her with open arms. You've done enough fighting, her mother whispered. You deserve peace now. Alicia smiled. Maybe. But peace isn't given, it's built. And I'm not done building yet. As the lights of the city shimmered through the glass walls of the convention center, Alicia looked out over the skyline. She had started as a daughter fighting for her mother's life. Now, she was a voice for millions. Her story had begun with revenge, but it ended with reform, because true justice wasn't destroying the corrupt, it was creating a world where corruption could never thrive again. And Dr. Alicia Morgan had done exactly that.